All right, we're going to now look at integrating products of tangents and secants. And so if you could look at the bottom of page 12 in your class notes, there are a total of 3 cases to consider. We're only going to focus on the first 2 cases. And so if you look at this table, when n is even, and so when secant is even, you're going to split off a factor of secant squared, and then you're going to apply the identity that goes with tangent squared x plus 1 is equal to secant squared. And then if tangent is odd, we're going to split off a factor of secant x tangent x, and then apply the relevant identity, which is tangent squared x is equal to secant squared x minus 1. Okay, so you can make the substitution of u is equal to secant of x. So for this first one, u is equal to tangent of x, you can see that du will come out to secant squared of x dx. And then for this one, when u is equal to secant of x, then du is equal to secant of x tangent of x. Now this third case of tangent being even and secant being odd, we are not going to cover that, so you could just X that out. Okay, so let's turn to page 13, and we're going to do 2 problems. All right, so in example 5, let me get my paper straight here. This is the case where secant is even, and so if secant is even, I'm going to rewrite it so that I make secant to the 4th power as secant of x times secant of x. So this will be the integral of tangent squared of x times secant squared x times secant squared x dx. Okay, and then I'm going to use the Pythagorean identity, which states that secant, you're going to use secant squared x is equal to 1 plus tangent squared x, and then I'll rewrite it. So I end up with the integral of tangent squared x, and then the 1 secant squared x, I'm going to rewrite it as 1 plus tangent squared x, and then keep the secant squared x dx. Okay, next I'm going to distribute the tangent squared x, so you have the integral of tangent squared x plus tangent to the 4th x times secant squared x dx. Okay, now you're able to do a nice u sub because the derivative of tangent of x is secant squared x. So I'm going to do the u sub of u equaling tangent of x. And so du is equal to secant squared x dx, and then you have a nice substitution. Okay, so then if I do the substitution, I end up with integral of u to the 2nd power plus u to the 4th power, and then the secant squared x dx just becomes the du, and then I'll integrate that, so that comes out to 1/3 u to the 3rd plus 1/5 u to the 5th plus c, and then I just make my substitution. So I have 1/3 tangent cubed x plus 1/5 tangent to the 5th x plus c. All right, the next case is when tangent is odd. Right, so if tangent is odd, I'm going to make it so that I have, I'm going to make tangent cubed x as tangent squared x, and then I have another tangent of x, and then make secant cubed x as secant squared x and another secant of x. So I'm going to rewrite it this way. So it's integral of tangent squared x times secant squared x, and then I have left over secant of x tangent of x dx. So eventually this right here is going to become my du if I do my u sub of a secant of x. Okay, so then I'll use my Pythagorean identity again, and this time I'm going to be using use the Pythagorean identity, and that is tangent squared x, and that is equal to secant squared x minus 1. Okay, sorry for those bubbles coming up. Alright, and then the next part is substitution, so it's equal to integral of, and so I'm making the tangent squared x as secant squared x minus 1 times secant squared x, and then I have my secant x tangent of x dx, and multiply this out, so that's going to equal integral secant to the fourth x minus secant squared x, and then you have secant of x times tangent of x dx. Okay, so now I'm ready to do my u sub. So the u is going to equal secant of x, and du is equal to secant of x tangent of x dx. And I have exactly that right here. Okay, so then do my substitution. So I end up with integral of u to the fourth minus u squared du, and that is equal to 1/5 u to the fifth minus 1/3 u to the third plus c. Okay, now making my substitution of u equaling secant of x, my final answer is 1/5 secant to the fifth x minus 1/3 secant to the third x plus c. Okay, this last example you can just X out. We're not going to be going through problems where tangent is even and secant is odd. Okay, you're now ready to do your homework. So just go ahead and do the homework that is in your textbook.